Hey guys, I'm Pranavi Nissan and welcome back to another video. I apologize for disappearing so suddenly for the past month. I had a lot on my plate and I was taking a break from YouTube, Booktube and reading in general. I haven't read anything in the past 5 weeks and it was not a good time not reading. So now I'm back with extra vigor and energy into reading, and I bought about 9 new books, 3 of them hardcovers, 3 of them paperbacks and 3 of them Audible audiobooks, and I'm super excited and pumped about sharing them with you. So without any further delay, let's get into a good old-fashioned book haul. Alright, so I usually consider hardcover copies to be the royalty of the book hierarchy and the book family tree thing. So I'm going to start with the hardcover copies in this book haul, and the first book I'm going to share is the most recent purchase. I bought it yesterday and it was delivered just this morning, and I'm very pumped to read it. That is Man Enough: Undefining My Masculinity by Justin Baldoni. Justin Baldoni is an actor, a director and a social activist, and this is his non-fiction book. So let me just read out what's written on the jacket for you. The effects of traditionally defined masculinity have become one of the most prevalent social issues of our time. In this engaging, provocative new book, beloved actor, director and social activist Justin Baldoni reflects on his own struggles with masculinity. Writing from his experience, Justin invites us to move beyond the scripts we've learned since childhood and the roles we are expected to play. He challenges men to be brave enough to be vulnerable, to be strong enough to be sensitive, and to be confident enough to listen. So I heard about this book through his TED Talk. Not through his TED Talk. The TED Talk came before he wrote this book actually. The TED Talk is called Why I Am Done Being Man Enough. And after listening to his TED Talk and his perspective and his views on masculinity and how we've defined masculinity in a way that is stopping us from being better humans, I was very invested in his thought process and how he wanted to change the society and masculinity in his own way. So I decided to buy the book. I got this for 714 rupees from Amazon, and it's a hardcover. It's of very good quality. The jacket is, it's a very different kind of jacket. It's very beautiful. It's a hardcover copy, like I mentioned before, and it's about 240 pages long. I am very interested in reading his book. I usually don't go for non-fictions, but when I heard his TED Talk, I was very captivated by his perspective of masculinity and how he wants to help women and men become equal and just undefine the rules of masculinity. I like that man a lot. He is a very charming person. From what I've seen in his interviews and his podcast called Man Enough, I think it's called Man Enough. He invites guests over on that podcast like Shawn Mendes and all. And I really like this man, and I'm very interested on what he has to say about masculinity and how he wants to change the definition of it. You don't read non-fiction books because you believe what that person is saying. You just read books so that you can explore different perspectives, and I really want to explore this man's perspective because I was very impressed by what he was saying in his TED Talk, and this is just an extension of his TED Talk. So if you're interested in this book, I suggest that you listen to the TED Talk, and if that talk was something you found interesting or explore worthy, then I suggest that you go for this book. So moving on to the second book, which is a fiction book, and that is one of the most beautiful books I have ever read. So this book I already read before, but I listened to the audiobook version of it on VK. It is one of the most wonderfully written book ever. That is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield. I came across this book when I was searching for books which are similar to The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I loved that book to moon and back, and while I was searching similar books, I came across The 13th Tale. It's not exactly similar to The Seven Husbands, but I loved it equally. And Diane Setterfield's writing is amazing. She writes in the most flowy, indulgent, amazing writing. I found her writing to be similar to Laini Taylor's writing. She's the author of Strange the Dreamer, which is another wonderful book, and also Erin Morgenstern, who is the author of The Night Circus and The Starless Sea. So The 13th Tale is high on my list of recommendations to anyone who likes historical fiction. It's not exactly historical fiction, but it happens in the past, so let's count it as historical fiction. It has a wonderful prose, it has wonderful plot, the characters are so deep and intense, you just have to read it. So The 13th Tale is about 2 women. First woman is Margaret Lee. She is a bookshop owner. She sells vintage books, and she is offered an interview with a very reclusive old writer called Vida Winter. So Vida Winter is this mysterious, exotic, strange woman who's written tons and tons and tons of books in her lifetime, but she has never given a truthful answer in any of her interviews. No matter how many people interviewed her, she always comes up with a new lie or a new story to tell them about her life. It's never the truth. Now she's about 85 years old, and she has finally decided to tell the truth about her life, her story, and why she comes up with these lies and stories to tell everyone. And she decides to give this interview to Margaret. Nobody knows why she chose Margaret, but she did. And now she's invited Margaret to her home to tell her her story, Vida Winter's story. The whole world is waiting to listen to that story. My god, this book is wonderful. Wonderful. I'll post an in-depth review of this book later on in this channel. Please watch it because this is one of the books which you need to read. It has everything in it. And I am super pumped about finally owning a copy. And this copy is so beautiful. It has brown deckled edges and it smells wonderful. It has the brown, faded brown, musty look of an old book, and I got this for $4.99 on Amazon. It's a used copy and it's in a wonderful condition for a used copy. It's really pretty. Look at the spine. The spine is so beautiful. I'm telling you, you need to read this book. If you don't want to buy the copy, at least find it on VK. It's very easy to find on VK, and listen to the audiobook. This book is a fantasy/fairy tale retelling, and that is Malice by Heather Walter. And from the title and the general vibe of the book, I'm sure you can guess that this is the retelling of Sleeping Beauty or Maleficent. So this is an LGBTQ retelling of Maleficent. I mean, Sleeping Beauty, not Maleficent. The classic fairy tale of Sleeping Beauty. This is the LGBTQ retelling of it. So this book follows the story of Princess Aurora. Princess Aurora and her entire line of princesses is cursed to die on their 21st birthday. And Aurora has just turned 20. And as we all know, the curse can be broken only by true love's kiss. So now that she's 20, she got only 1 year to find her true love and to kiss him or her and become the queen that her kingdom needs or her queendom needs. And on the other side of the story, we have Alice. Alice is called Malice because she is very evil. She's this dark witch in the kingdom who curses everyone. She's like she doesn't do it voluntarily, the cursing. She is bound to serve the kingdom with her evil powers. And she hates everyone. She doesn't care what happens to Princess Aurora, but she meets Aurora one day. And as soon as she meets Aurora, there is an instant spark of chemistry or something really intense between them. And this is the story of hero versus villain. Not versus villain, the villain falling in love with the heroine. So I'm really interested to find out what could happen there between Aurora and Malice, since they're like on the opposite sides. I don't know. It's just too dark and evil and malicious to not read. And this book is about 480 pages long and it's beautiful looking, to be honest. And I got it for 420 rupees on Amazon. To be fair, I bought it about 1 month ago. I'm not sure if the price has fluctuated up or down, but I think you should all check it out. I mean, who doesn't love a evil villain's backstory or villain falling in love with the hero? It's really cool. So sticking to the theme of fantasy, let's move on to the next book. But this book is nothing like Malice. Malice is evil and malicious, but this book is the most heartwarming, adorable, cute little fantasy ever. And that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by Tj Klune. I actually read this book before. I listened to the audiobook version of it and it was too cute to not own. And when this book was on sale, I just didn't think much about it and I just grabbed it. I got this paperback copy for $300 on Amazon. All of my books are from Amazon. Just that's a default. So this is magical realism. It happens in this world only, but there's magic in this world. So this follows the story of Linus Baker. Linus Baker works in the department in charge of magical youth. He's 40 years old, he lives with his cats, and he has no company. He's a stickler for rules. And one day he's summoned by the bosses of the department in charge of magical youth, and he is given the most secret, the most dangerous project ever. He has to go to an island and inspect the orphanage on that island and check out the 6 orphans who live there. These 6 orphan children are supposedly the most dangerous creatures in the world, and he has to make sure that they are well contained, they are kept in isolation away from the world, and they can cause no harm to anyone. And when Linus arrives at the strangest of islands, he is greeted by a series of mysterious figures, the greatest mystery of which is Arthur, the master of the orphanage. As Linus and Arthur grow closer, Linus discovers the master would do anything to keep the children safe, even if it means that the world has to burn, or worse, his secret comes to life. House in the Cerulean Sea is the most enchanting, adorable, feel-good story. It has the vibes of A Man Called Uva. So if you're a person who likes books like A Man Called Uva or The 100-Year-Old Man Who Climbed Out of the Window and Disappeared, I'm sure you're going to love Tj Klune's books. And there's a new one coming out, I think, this year. And this is one of his most adorable books, The House in the Cerulean Sea. And I'm quite sure that everybody needs to read this book. It's just too warm and fuzzy and cozy to not read. In the hall are from the same author. The first one is I'll Give You the Sun, and the second one is The Sky is Everywhere. And these two books are by Jandy Nelson. They look so adorable together. Each of them is $2.25 or something in that range. And they are two feel-good, heartwarming, heartbreaking novels. So the first one, let's talk about The Sky is Everywhere. I'm supposed to be grieving, not falling in love. So this book is about Lenny Walker. She's 17 years old. She's obsessed with Wuthering Heights. She's a clarinet player and also a hopeless romantic. She's prone to scattering poems all over town, and as of 4 weeks ago, she's sisterless. So from what I get from the back of the cover, this is the story of Lenny Walker, and she just lost her sister. And this is the story of first loss and first love. So she's supposed to be grieving and mourning her sister, not falling in love with the guys around her. So this is the story of Lenny Walker and the two boys she meets. One of them sits with her through her grief, helps her mourn and battle the grief, and the other one is trying to pull her out of the grief, show the beauty in the world. Which one does she pick? So that sounds really heartwarming and compelling. It's a cute little young adult contemporary novel, and it looks really adorable. And the best part about the story is there are tons of poems inside. Like this, like how would you write your poem and just in your rough notes? It's like that. There are so many of them. Let me show you. Yeah, like this. Isn't that adorable? I love books which have personal touches like that, like from a piece of poem or a piece of paper from the characters in the book. It's like little mementos of magic and story. It's really cute. Look at this. Oh, it's so pretty. So the second one is I'll Give You the Sun. So this is the story of two twins, Jude and Noah. Jude and Noah are close until a tragedy drives them apart. So Jude and Noah are these incredibly close twins, and they have this wonderful connection and a kind of telepathy between them, but then at the age of 16 they lose their mother and it drives them apart. Now they're barely speaking and both are falling for boys they can't have, and love is complicated. So this follows the story of Jude and Noah's first love and their take on grief, how they are tackling life without their mother, without each other, because they were really close before their mother died, and after that they've been driven apart, and their father is not the most like warm and kind person, so they have to deal with so much separation and so much grief alone. It's just really compelling and heartbreaking to see so much grief and so much struggle in the world. I mean, this is fictional story, but if you really think about it, it's not fiction. Every fiction is inspired from real life, and there must be tons of kids out there dealing with the loss of a parent. It's a really good thing to learn empathy for them by reading such stories and reading such books. And even this book, like its sister novel, has many little mementos from the character's life. In this book, it's all about art. That book was all about poems and poetry. This book is all about art. So you get to see random paintings and random scribbles and doodles all throughout the book. I cannot find an example to show. Just consider this for an example, like a splash of paint or splotches of color and ink throughout the book. It's really cute. And it's written in this very whimsical manner. I didn't read it yet, but I just went through the first few chapters of I'll Give You the Sun. The writing is so like imaginative. It's exactly how a teenager would think. Like a teenager doesn't think like how usually the authors write, in perfect sentences, in like things that make sense. It's very wild and random, especially in an artist's mind. It's very imaginative and out of the world, and it's written exactly like that, or at least as far as I could tell from the first few chapters. The writing was very pretty, unique. I mean, it takes a while to get into the writing, but once you get into it, it's like you're in the mind of the character and you don't want to get out of it. So these are the last two paperbacks or physical copies of the books I purchased. Now let's move on to the audiobooks. The first audiobook I purchased from Audible, since I have a few remaining credits left, is The Kingdom of Bag by Mary Lou. Is the name? I think it's Mary Lou. Yeah, so The Kingdom of Bag is a historical fiction. It's about Mozart's sister. As we all know, Mozart is this legendary musician, music composer. This is the story of not of Mozart but his sister, who was apparently more talented than him, but female oppression and all those things, she couldn't make her name in the world. This is her story, not exactly her real story. This is imagination of how her story would have been. So the female Mozart, I can't remember her name, since I didn't listen to this book completely yet, so I know just little snippets of the story. This little girl, we start from her childhood. She invents a little kingdom called the Kingdom of Bag, and in that it's magical. She gets inspiration for her music from that Kingdom of Bag, the imaginative Kingdom of Bag. She takes her brother there with her. I don't know how she does it, but it's something of a magical realism / historical fiction, and it's very indulgent. It's like another book I read called Paris by Starlight. It reminds me of that book, and I've heard really good things about it, so I'm really excited to get into it. So the second audiobook is The Serpent and the Dove. This is a fantasy trilogy. The Serpent and the Dove, I just started it this morning. I listened to 1 hour of it, and it's the classic fight or the war between church and the witches. Like how the Catholic Church used to hunt down witches and burn them alive. This is that story. We have Lou, she is a witch who's given up magic, and on the other side we have Reed, who is a witch hunter. He absolutely loathes witches, and these both are on the opposite sides, and due to a few unforeseen circumstances, they end up getting married. I have no idea how that happens, but that's what the premise says. They end up getting married, and this follows the trope of enemies to lovers, and I'm curious to see what happens. So far for 1 hour, you're just getting the lay of the land, building the foundation, familiarizing yourself with the world, the magic, the people around, the city and all. It's good. It's really good, and it's a trilogy, so I'm always excited to start a series because you can stay in that world for much longer than with a single book standalone fantasy. And the final book in this haul is House of Furies by Madeleine Roux. Is that her name? Madeleine Roux. This is also an audiobook, and The House of Furies is also a fantasy and magical realism story. It follows the story of a young girl who's run away from her school. That school is a torturous medieval Catholic. I don't mean all Catholic schools are like medieval and torturous. I grew up in a Catholic school. It's wonderful. But this school that this girl went to was torturous, and they tortured her every single minute of the day, and she ran away from that place. But now she has nowhere to go. She is begging on the streets, and she finds an inn. And that inn, I think, is called Wet Thistle House or Dry Thistle, something like a huge inn. It's very dark and dooming and very ominous looking. So she finds a job as a maid in that inn. But something she doesn't know about that inn is any guest who comes into that is murdered. They are murdered by the staff and the master. And the master of the inn is none other than the devil himself. So any person who comes to that inn is a grave sinner or something like that who deserves to die. And this master doles out their punishment in the form of death. This kind of reminds me of The House in the Cerulean Sea. It's darker than that book. It's more evil than that book, but it shows us that you could be weird, you can be awkward, you could be rejected by anyone and everyone in the world, but once you find your clan, once you find your people of group of weirdos, you're home. And this inn is like a home for all the weirdos and the outcasts who got rejected by society, but they're all really loving and kind people. And this girl who ran away from a home and is rejected by her parents, her grandparents, and everyone she's ever known, finds a beautiful home there. She's spooked at first that, oh my god, I'm a murderess now, but later on she sees the truth, she sees the justice in the way things are done there. So it's kind of nice. I read half of it and I got into the reading slump, so I'm yet to finish it. As soon as I finish it, I'll post a review right here in this channel, and please stay tuned for it. And that's it for this video. I've spoken about the 9 books, and I hope that you found something you like and we can read it together and share our views in the comment section. So until the next video, goodbye and take care.